Here's something I realized recently. Some of us who have been involved in nonprofits and church ministries for a long time, over a decade and more, some of us have never wanted to be political. It isn't about politics for us. We've never engaged in political organizations. I was registered as an independent for my whole adult life. I was never one to go on marches or to go, hold picket signs. I don't get involved in my local politics or government offices. I don't go to, Board of Supervisors meetings. I haven't been, that's not who I am. I haven't been involved in those things for a long time. There was a day back in my 20s, I'm 51 now, and back in my 20s, maybe early 30s, I thought, maybe I'll get involved in local politics. I never had aspirations. I can never be president because I wasn't born here. But I never had any kind of aspirations to be some big public figure, especially in government in any way, shape, or form. And so I'm saying all this because of the context of when people like me or my husband get accused of being political within a faith community. It has this kind of triggering effect for us. Like, we have tried to not be political for so long, and we have tried to endeavor to be a true both sides community where we're engaging in conversations. We are not writing off people on either side of the aisle. There's always more than one side, by the way. It's never two sides. We're not trying to pigeonhole people or make people, we're not demanding that people adhere to certain, a column, column A or column B, and that's that, right? That we've never been those people. I remember, for example, when the AND campaign came out, I didn't look up the year, I'm sorry, but I will look it up. When that came out, we were like, yes, thank you. There is nuance and complexity to any issue that involves human beings or anything living. It all is complex, and there's so many intricate decisions and interrelated outcomes that you can't make. Most of the time, you cannot make some blanket decisions that won't have repercussions. And we're constantly, as a society, weighing those things out. And then we have to decide, is this for the greater good, right? Or is this something that we can agree that this will best protect and represent the majority of people? Now, here's what's interesting about that. Because as we know, as Christians who adhere to a faith that is based very much on the not majority, we have been told by Christ himself, narrow is the way. And there will be many who will not agree with our particular faith commitments. You know that. So anytime the majority agrees with us, we should be a little concerned, right? I mean, maybe it's just the space you're in where everybody thinks like you. That's one thing. But when society at large has ideas, and we start to realize, well, wait a minute, these decisions that are being made inherently marginalize some people and inherently cause risk towards a group of people, towards a demographic that we may not be part of. And our job, I believe deeply that our job as Christians is to protect those who are most marginalized, who are most at risk. And to realize that it is part of what it means to be a follower of Jesus, to identify folks who need our help and need our protection and need someone to be their voice and to support them. Because every life is sacred. Every life is Imago Dei, and every life needs to be embraced and cared for. So with that in mind, we do end up taking stands with people. We end up taking stands with people that others may say, well, you shouldn't be standing with them. You shouldn't be listening to them because they're, sinful, wicked, they're the world, they're the culture, and all these kind of labels that we put on them. And we make this hard and fast line that says, those people are not with us. And it concerns me that the people who are doing that the loudest and with the most vengeance and even violent speech are people who claim to be Christian and who claim to be part of faith communities. And now, the tables have turned according to them, and now it's the Christians being persecuted, and that's been the narrative since I was a kid. I mean, it's always been, we need to protect the Christians. But I wonder if, after all this time, what we haven't noticed is that it's the Christians that are doing the persecuting. Not just, not all Christians, and not only Christians. But I'm only concerned about the people who call themselves Christians, who are in my circles, and who continue to cling to this narrative. It boils down to their lives and their comfort is more important than others. And that's a problem for me. And I believe it's a problem for Jesus. So where does the politics come in? That we've found ourselves, folks like me, folks like my husband, we have found ourselves without a church home that understands the work that I'm laying out here in standing for those who are vulnerable and marginalized, the folks who don't get a voice and who continue to take the heat in society. And we've found that it's not the church who's working towards those protections. It's politicians. And it's the politicians who are starting to recognize, not starting to, but there are politicians out there who recognize the harm that is done in the name of Christianity or other faith communities, who come in and say that this is against my faith and my beliefs, and so it needs to be against everybody's. And the politicians who, some of whom come from the same traditions I do, and faith communities I do, and they see the same things I see, and they say, that is not how we are to live here in the United States of America. That is not what our values are. That is not how we want to conduct our country. And that we truly do believe in plurality. We truly do believe in the right to the pursuit of happiness and all the things, right? life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. We really do. And as a believer, I absolutely still hold to the work of the Holy Spirit. I believe in a God who it is his will for none to perish. And I want to do all I can for folks who are in harm's way. And I think that that's the work that we need to be doing. Whether or not I agree with them is irrelevant. It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant whether or not I agree with whatever their choices are in life. What is important is that I believe they have a right to believe those things and to live in a way that reflects their values. Do I have to add the caveat, of course, that, if their values are such that it causes harm to others, yeah, then that's where our government needs to have very clear guidelines, and it does. I mean, we constantly work on that as a society, to have very clear guidelines on what's acceptable and what's not. And what's interesting to me is how Christians are actually acting in a way that is discriminatory based on religion. And so now we have that flip side of, do we pitch ourselves as a Christian nation that adheres to XYZ values, and anyone who doesn't have those values are now the enemy of the state? That's where we're headed. And that scares me. I mean, that scares the crap out of me. And as it should everybody. I don't want to be alarmist and be insane about it. But I am worried about it. And I think the church itself needs to be worried about this. And it's not about the Christians being persecuted necessarily. But it's about anyone who dares to question the validity of who is discriminating against who. Whom? Who is discriminating against whom? That should worry us all. And I want so much for us to continue to have these conversations, to be willing to hear each other out in the days ahead as things get dicier. And let's all be willing to do that work together. Please. Thank you.